Well, now it's time to look ahead to next Sunday's eagerly awaited hurling final. And we're joined by Brendan Cummins, Donal, Cusack and Eddie Brennan for their views on the titanic clash of Kilkenny and Tipperary.
Inside Richie Hogan. Hogan buries it. And Kilkenny lead. First time in the game, Kilkenny in front. That's dropped in there dangerously. What a goal! They've got it. And Kilkenny have won. It's been some battle. Two magnificent teams gave us tremendous drama this afternoon.
And the ball comes through. Callanan again. Hudson on the ground. He tries to make an angle. He's having a shot. Oh my word! What a brilliant goal! Comes through Martin Randall. It's going to be a Tipperary Kilkenny All-Ireland hurling final on Sunday, September 7th.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it. Well, Brendan Cummins, no more than a couple of the other guests tonight. For the first time, you're not involved. How are you finding your first season on the sidelines?
Yeah, look, it's fine. Tipperary now in that Ireland final. I'm starting to see the bunting go up around Tip and all. The heart starts to race, and then you tell yourself, wait a minute, now you're not playing in this thing no more. And Donal went through at the time as well, you know. So, but look, when somebody like me leaves the dressing room, other leaders and characters come up, and I'm delighted to see Seamus Callanan, Blossman, Paddy Maher, you know, Darren Gleeson had a great game the last day. Delighted for him. So look, I'm just looking forward to it, and this time I won't. I'll be able to sleep the night before the game. So I look forward to watching it on that basis.
And Donal, generally, do players sleep? I mean, the build-up of the times you've been involved in must affect different players in very different ways.
Yeah, I suppose, like you said, it affects different players in different ways, and players approach it differently. I know, from my own point of view, playing a big game, I'd always take the Wednesday and Thursday of a 2 days holidays just to get the mind right and make sure the body was right and get all of the housekeeping out of the way, if you like. But it can be a really challenging week for players, you know, because they still have their daily lives to get on with, and they've got maybe, you know, the books or the job, and they still have the mortgage to pay and all of those kind of things. But there's nothing beats it, you know. I think we were talking about it before we came on. We wouldn't, if we could go back there, of course we go back there. It's hard to find anything that beats that type of excitement, if you like.
Well, Eddie, you played in so many finals. Was the last one very different from your first one in the build-up?
Yeah, definitely. I was only 22 for the first one and was a sub, so I think you don't get too wound up over it. And as a young fella, I think the first few years, you don't tend to get too hung up on the mental side of it or the other preparation. I think you just live it from day to day, train session to train session, and then, you know, you enjoy life a little bit more. But as you get older, you tend to focus on stuff a little bit more. You try to control your build-up. And a big thing too is getting the tickets out of the way. I mean, that might seem like a small. Donal mentions the housekeeping. That's something that if you're inexperienced, you can get very caught up in the likes of that. And another thing is even talking to people. While they mean well, you know, sometimes you have to be able to pass yourself. And that's a skill in itself, to pass yourself and not be rude to people and just get on with it, because you can't afford to kind of spend an hour or two walking around talking to people around. Like, it's just not it's not good for you, and it drains you to a certain extent. But as Donal said there, and Brendan, it's just the adrenaline rush, the nerves. It's so hard, but it's just so addictive.
I always made that point, Des, it's an interesting one with the tickets. Being able to deal with things like that is as an important a skill to have and to be able to learn and develop as the other skills that are needed to perform well on the day.
OK, well, let's look at... Obviously, we don't know what teams are going to line out, but Brendan, how do you think Kilkenny will line out?
Well, Kilkenny, I suppose, when Brian Cody sits down in Langton's and decides who's going to be the goalie, I think that's going to be the first big conversation. Like David Errett, even though the last day the conditions mightn't have been great, Owen Murphy is still chomping at the bit there. So we think David Errett will end up playing in the goals. The full back line pretty much picks itself in Paul Murphy, JJ Delaney and Jackie Turrell. JJ, the wily old fox, will have a serious battle with Seamus Callanan. There's no doubt about that, you know. And whoever wins that battle could particularly bring out be the winners in the All-Ireland. The half-back line then, Joey Holden, Brian Hogan and Killian Buckley. Look, they're experienced campaigners, no doubt about that. In the middle of the field then, we have Conor Fogarty and Richie Hogan. Now, Richie Hogan has been the playmaker and, you know, he's been fantastic for Kilkenny. The way he sprays the ball around the place, he's really making that team tick. In the half-forward line then, we're looking at Padraig Walsh, Michael Fennelly and TJ Reid. This has been an area now against that Cork struggled with against Tipperary. They'd be expecting Michael Fennelly there and TJ especially to win a few puck outs against Paddy Maher and try to break that curtain across there. The inside line then is the only change you see then, is that Mark Kelly could lose out to Richie Power with Conor Fennelly and Owen Larkin inside him. Goals are going to be key in this game, and the way Richie Power played the last time he came on, you know, he's a serious threat inside in that full forward line.
OK, and in case anyone watching, that's only the views of the lads and what the team will be. The strengths and weaknesses then, Donal, of if that's the lineup.
Yeah, if that's the lineup, I suppose. Look, the big one is Henry Shefflin not starting an All-Ireland final for Kilkenny in the Cody era. That's obviously new territory, even though it is very seductive to have him available for the last 20 minutes. Brendan spoke about the goalkeeping position. You know, David Harity may be questionable under the high ball is what we were looking at, but you know, you'd have to say there's question marks over Owen Murphy in terms of his performance as well. So, and it's not an ideal way to be going into an All-Ireland final when there is question marks over your goalkeeper. Kilkenny defence, look, they've got some of the greatest defenders of all time. But having said that, they'll face this game with Tipperary. They'll be coming up against the best forward line that they have all year. Midfield, Richie Hogan has been outstanding. The Tipperary midfield was outstanding against Cork. Maybe answered a lot of questions, but how hard were the questions that they were asked that day? And in the forward line, if you're not starting Shefflin, I just wonder, would Kilkenny be tempted maybe to spring Walter Welsh? Is it Padraig Maher? Would he be a different type of player for Padraig Maher? And a guy I'm always on about is Colin Fennelly in the forward line. I think that one of these days, I'm a big fan of the way he plays the game, he's going to open up in an All-Ireland final.
Yeah, the scope for that, Brian has shown before, and I suppose I benefited myself in 11, having sat on the bench all year. But you know, they would have had training sessions, and you know, often and often a fella can show a nice bit of form at the right time. And you know, Walter Welsh done well on Padraig Maher, put him under pressure in the league, but this is an All-Ireland final, and you know, we'll lightning strike twice. All
right. Well, if we were to ask you then, how do you think Tip will line out?
I don't see there any changes being made to Tip. Mickey Cahill is probably the big loser there, been their most consistent player and probably one of their best defenders over the last couple of years. But Darren Gleeson was superb. Came in for a fair bit of criticism, but he has certainly filled the boots left behind by Brendan, and did it with aplomb the last day. The full-back line, you've your two cornerbacks, Cahill Barrett and Paddy Stapleton, very good the last day. Now, Padraig Maher is named the 3, but I don't expect him to play there. I reckon he'll be playing number 7, and you'll see James Barry, who is named at centre-back, Brendan Maher obviously on one side of him, and Kieran Bergen. Now, Kieran Bergen will probably start 5. You'll see Brendan Maher probably at 6, and then, as we said, James Barry at full-back. Midfield then, these two guys were superb the last day, Shane McGrath and James Woodlock. Excellent, worked hard, chipped in 6 points. I would imagine this is an area Kilkenny will definitely target, that they want to allow these two get freedom again like the last day. Up front, positions could be irrelevant at times. Garrod Ryan, De Bonner and John Dwyer, they've been very important for them all year. Bonner, very direct, hard working. I would describe him as the most annoying forward in the game, and I mean that in the best sense. He just will not go away from defenders, which is a great quality. Garrod Ryan will drop a little bit deeper, and then these 3 inside, Shamie Callan spearheading it, having the best season by a mile since he has broke onto the Tip scene. And then you have the 2 quiet men the last day, Noel McGrath and Lara Corbett. It's set up nicely for the 2 of them because they had quiet semi-finals, so you know, could they go mad on the big day? And the thing is with Tip, they will be focusing on trying to open up the Kilkenny backs. Those forwards do an awful lot of running off the ball. They're crisscrossing the whole time. They even make runs to create space for somebody else, and that's the challenge. It'll be interesting to see how Kilkenny decide to tackle that.
Is it well balanced, Donal? That's set up?
Yeah, it is a balanced team. Look, Darren Gleeson, he's proved himself a good distributor as well as a good shot stopper, and that's every bit as important when you're a goalkeeper. The defence will move around like Eddie said, they won't start the way they're going to be named. I think it's a big test for James Barry. We heard Tomas saying earlier on about trying to hammer the hammer. Kilkenny have a history of looking for the weakness and trying to expose weaknesses in the opposing defence, and I'd imagine that they'll try and isolate James inside, and they won't show any mercy if they get into that situation. Midfield, They've been really strong against Cork, 6 points the last day. The one question I'd put out there is, would you start Michael Cahill? I think he's one of the top defenders in the game, and would he be even an option to have around the middle of the field? Richie Hogan plays such a, he's top class, he's such a great distributor. I think you used the word quarterback, he's the sweetest striker in the game. Would a Michael Cahill type character in and top of him do a job? And the forward line, the one thing about all the Tipperary forwards is they can all hurl, which is a great asset, and they'll do as much as possible to move the Tipperary team around, and they've got a real ace in the pack in both Bonner Maher and this year Callan have really stepped up to the plate.
Well, equally, I suppose the Kilkenny forwards have their movement as well, Brendan, you see as one of their big strengths.
Yeah, to Tipperary defence the last, they weren't really stretched against Cork. Cork went very narrow the way they played the game, even the supply of the ball in. And we'd look at it here, like Bill Cooper gets the ball, that ball should be put into the corner forward for Alan Cadigan. Even then, Alan Cadigan makes a run out towards the field when we should be cutting across the field. The ball in is slow, and it's been a hallmark really of Kilkenny's play that the ball goes in quickly. Tipperary backline are able to swarm around and launch an attack. Below in Tullamore then, what happens when Killian Buckley gets the ball? There's exactly the same space inside, but the ball is delivered quickly, and you notice there's not a Kilkenny forward in shot. But very minute the ball is struck, then it goes in quick, and who pops up when Colin Fennelly? Now, Colin Fennelly at this stage, defender has to back off, doesn't want to foul him, and even just inside, we can see Mark Kelly coming in looking for a hand pass. So Colin Fennelly got a nice point. And then also there's that telepathic thing between the Kilkenny forwards. Walter Walsh goes up for the ball, Owen Larkin makes an arc and run. Owen knows Walter's not going to catch the ball, he's going to break it down for him. And guess what? Owen Larkin breaks through the defence. He wouldn't be the fastest player in the world, but when he gets in like that, his skill and the way he holds the hurley shot to finish off the goal is fantastic. So not only will Kilkenny go up in the air, but they change the angle of the ball with the hurley, and that causes panic for defences.
Well, that's the intelligence of their forwards, but their work rate is another key element.
Yeah, they are. Everyone's saying, we open up the Kilkenny backline, but it's very hard to get at them with the work rate that the forwards put in. Here, if you strike the ball when you're standing as a forward against Kilkenny, you're in trouble, because the forward coming back to hook you. And Colin Fennelly, the roar goes up, but then he shows composure, plays a 1-2 like football, I suppose, but then he doesn't give the narrow ball down the side. He looks to open up the play and plays it out wide again. Then you have Breen breaks the defence, gets inside. Now Brian Hogan, this will be one that Bonner Maher will be watching. Brian Hogan struggles to get across to him. But then when the shot comes in, guess who pops up at the edge of the square? Colin Fennelly, a centre forward playing inside in his own full back line. And then you have turnovers. If the Kilkenny forwards get the ball back off of you, then Richie Hogan plays the ball in. And like we said earlier, they change the direction of the ball when it comes in high. Colin Fennelly moves it on. Richie Power knows what he's going to do. Again, a little 1-2. They had a 4v2 situation there. The two players from Kilkenny won it out of complete cuteness. They won't go with the hand. They want to get the ball down to ground. And I think where they're getting this from is below in Nolan Park when they're training. They know they're not going to get anything soft to put their hand up. So they give the little flick, the little angle on the hurley like that, break the ball down, and they all know what's going on, and that's what makes it work.
All right, so the Tip defence are up against that and have to deal with that, Eddie. How will they do that? Yeah,
well, when you look back at the previous two, 09 and 10 particularly, I think there was an emphasis on protecting the D, and even the last day, we've seen Pádraig Maher, backing off into midfield, takes a pass from Darren Gleeson, an ambitious pass, high risk, high reward, but he's looking heads up, gives it to Bonner. Bonner gets it and just head down and straight through the middle. Now, a little bit more composure, he may well have had a shot on goal, and this is against Dublin in the quarter-final, when their option, Dublin kind of ran into them. And this is what Tip would like to do, keep it nice and tight down the middle. Now Danny Sutcliffe has the speed to go down the middle. Instead he turns back in and gets dispossessed. Kieran Bergen comes along and picks it up, and you look how narrow Tipperary are there. They have a lot of bodies around the middle, again on the D. Shane McGrath picks up the ball here, and when he breaks through the two Dublin tackles, here's Lar, 45 yards out, he's playing number 15, and he makes a run to the opposite, and Shane McGrath spots that run, and it's a great first touch and a superb point going away from goal over your shoulder. And that to me is what Tipperary will be trying to do next week. And obviously Shane McGrath and Woodlock were superb the last day, and Woodlock just takes out 3 Cork players with that, and he has Shane McGrath then running off him, peels off. Daniel Carney gets sucked in. That's the 4th Cork player he has taken out with that run, and Shane McGrath takes off one of his 3 points the last day. And in the league final, or in the league in Nolan Park earlier on this year, in the first half, we've seen Tipperary really tear Kilkenny's defence asunder with direct running and long ball in, and Seamus Callanan scoring, his second goal. And this is what Tipperary, I would imagine, will be trying to do next Sunday, that they will be trying to create the space for the lads to run into the space. It was where their form, when you take coming into the All-Ireland in 11, that's what they really tried to do, and it's going to be interesting to see how they pry open the Kilkenny defence, because they will not, you know, obviously it's a simple game, forget your sweepers and all that stuff from last year. It'll be just on containing the opposition's forwards.
Okay, it was good to see that. The importance of goals clearly in a final.
Yeah, absolutely, Des, and I suppose it's continuing from what Eddie and Brendan were speaking about. When you're looking at analysis and you're trying to figure out teams and opposing teams, you're always looking for patterns. And in the 0-9 final, PJ Ryan was absolutely outstanding. But I think there was a level that was missed out on maybe by Kilkenny, that the amount of goal chances that Tipperary created, and goal chances where they were 1-on-1 or 2-on-1. You see Owen Kelly here, normally he'd finish it better. And Brian Cody's been outstanding over the years in terms of making the correct decision, but it was a wrong call to start Shefflin in the 2010 All-Ireland final, and it appeared that day as if they hadn't learned the lessons of the year before. If you look here, Lark Corbett had actually started in the half-forward line. He would be moving around the place like all the other Tipperary forwards the next day, and he was left 1-on-1 inside with Hickey. And again here, this is vintage Tipperary, vintage Eamon O'Shea, if you like. And you know, Eamon O'Shea, it was Liam Sheedy was the manager during that time, but Eamon O'Shea had a big influence. And even in 2012, when you're looking at it here, Kilkenny won well against Tipperary in the championship, but the last time they met, you can see a couple of times, very surprising for Kilkenny. David Hurley should have done better here, but again, it was 2-on-1, and that's something that Tipperary will have to do again to the Kilkenny defence if they're to be successful next week.
Just on that, from 2009, when we missed the goal chances, it's no coincidence that we took the extra step in 2010 to make sure, because it's no good, like Donal said, making the chances. We saw we weren't finishing them, so decided that we're going to take the extra 2 or 3 steps to see the whites of PJ Ryan's eyes, so we're not going to make a hero out of the goalie. And you saw Larry there, he went on the extra couple of steps to make sure, to be sure, because when you get in, you have to take the chance, because you mightn't get in there that often.
Yeah. All right then. Well, I mean, the familiarity of the sides, you know, and the rivalry and the local, it's a big match for a referee. It's a difficult match for a referee, isn't it?
Yeah, it's a huge match for Barry Kelly, and look, we all know familiarity breeds contempt, but you know, the contests that have taken place between these teams over the years has been outstanding, but there also has been a certain amount of lawlessness about it. And I know the cliche is often thrown around, it's a man's game, but there isn't anything manly about butting guys in the ribs, which are Hurley or, you know, Pádraig Maher, outstanding player, should have got a red card for this, for that tackle. And you know, Barry Kelly, he'll need to set down the law early, and he'll have to be consistent, because things can get out of hand. Again, Jackie Turrell here, like, there's nothing manly about that. That for me is a red card again. So he's going to have a big challenge on his hands. And what we've seen over the last couple of years is that referees tend to, in the latter stages of the year, they think they're under pressure to keep the game going, and they tend not to lay down the rules of the law as much as they should.
So they'll have to. I mean, so you're talking about if a red card offence occurs, it needs to be dished out, because it hasn't been.
Absolutely, Des. Yeah. It hasn't been enough. And like you said, Barry Kelly's going to be under pressure. It's a big day. They don't want to be blowing the whistle and maybe be accused of slowing down the game. But if it's not controlled early, there's a danger of it going out of control.
The worst case scenario for a referee is to have to make a decision like that, maybe early in the match. But personally, I think you know, there are occasions stuff like this happens, and obviously the referee has to deal with it. But I just think, you know, sometimes familiarity does breed the contempt. But I just think with the build-up to this All-Ireland and with the way it's been over the last years, I think there will be an emphasis on, I think players nowadays realise that stupidity just does not fly. And you just, you know, so are you in addition to your team sitting on the sideline? Certainly not. And I think, I don't expect, hopefully we won't see any of that. I think they're too good a hurling teams to let that kind of stuff get into the match.
One issue you've been campaigning on for a while, Donal, is the use of the spare hand.
Yeah, well, we've looked at the very obvious stuff there in terms of, you know, strikes and guys getting hurt, but this is really a curse in the game. Here you see Kieran McCarthy, and if you get caught by the bicep, or if you're just caught there for a small bit, it causes a load of rucks because you can't get away with the ball. Here you see Tipperary doing it again, same thing. Players know this, and they know that they know that there's a good chance that they'll get away with it. And you see here, you're not able to hand pass the ball away as much as possible. I would say over the last couple of years, 2 years especially, that referees have started to referee the game better. And this is one of the areas that they're focusing in on. And if we're looking for, which we all want, is a free-flowing All-Ireland final and showing the best skills of our games, and of course we want physicality, but if we want as few rucks, if you like, as possible, that use of the spare hand will have to be clamped down.
OK, obviously we have to have a one-word answer on our preview. The obvious ones, Brendan?
So I can't go home but that's to say Tipperary, but I think they will do it.
Eddie?
Kilkenny.
Donal?
A draw.
Go away with that. You can't go with a draw.
Yeah, well, look, Des, you know what I think? I think predictions are childish because how could you predict a game like this? And that's the beauty of the game. And you know, you even saw what happened in Dublin that today. Anyone who's predicting a scoreline for next Sunday either feels they have to or else they're bluffing.
OK, and you don't feel obliged to either bluff or have to.
No.
That's fair enough. All right, thank you, lads. Thank you very much. Eddie went for Kilkenny very quickly and no bother to him.
No doubt.
All right, lads, thank you for now. We'll discuss it further, of course, next Sunday night when, of course, we'll be naming our team of the year as well.